there, I'm Chris-Rachael with Fanboy TV. Thanks for joining us for our 6-hour live film fest where we're interviewing some of the best filmmakers that are here at South by Southwest in 2015. Right now we have a couple people from For Grace, which I am super excited to be talking to because, as you all know, I write cookbooks for a living. They made a wonderful documentary about a chef, so come on, we had to have them on. Introduce yourselves, gentlemen.
Hi, I'm Mark Helenowski.
I'm Gavin. We're co-directors of For Grace, and it's nice to be with you, Chris-Rachael.
Thank you. So what inspired you to make this documentary about this particular chef?
Well, so I'm a food writer at the Chicago Tribune, so I feel like we're kindred spirits already. But, you know, we wanted to follow a restaurant as it was built from an empty concrete box into the restaurant's first night. So we originally set out to do a short film, maybe about 15-20 minutes, and then as we started filming, we realized that this was just becoming much more than just the building of a restaurant. And so the chef, the protagonist, his name is Duffy, we followed him, and it's you know, it's really about him. It's about the sacrifices of these fine dining chefs who are working 17, 18 hours a day.
It's
tough.
incredible with things like that. I think a lot of people don't realize that because there's celebrity chefs and you think of it as being TV and you don't realize it is, like you said, 18-hour days. You barely have any time to sleep. In his particular case, you know, he lost his marriage as part of it. I mean, he had some other tragedies with his family as well. I don't want to give everything away for those of you that haven't seen it, but it's a huge amount of sacrifice for almost no money.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things for myself personally. You know, Kevin's in the food world as a food writer. He kind of knows this world. I came in kind of on the film side without knowing the depth of sacrifice that these guys have to go through, the 18-hour days. And really, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of profit margin. You see these, like, you know, at Grace, for example, dinner for two costs $800. And when you hear that, you think they must be making tons of money. But, you know, you see in the film, Curtis is driving a little Toyota Civic, you know, that's, you know, 10 years old or something. So, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions that coming into it were really eye-opening for me. And I think that's some of the stuff that we try to put into the film.
One of the things that I really liked about it was the fact that he's taking a lot of modern techniques, but using more traditional plating, so it's a little bit more accessible to people. Because when I try and tell people, like, hey, why don't you try the foam? Why don't you try some of these things that you would find, like, mostly in Chicago at Moto or whatever? Got to 3D print something and put it into your soup. They're like, no, we're good. Thank you very much. And the fact that he's making it more accessible, I really, really appreciated. Because, I mean, I'll try it, but I don't know if most people are going to walk in and like, why am I eating foam?
Well, that's the thing about his food is that, you know, he comes from this restaurant called Alinea, which is regarded as, by many, as one of the best restaurants in the country. And at Alinea, it's very much the modernist, the Moto style, you know, what they call molecular gastronomy.
Exactly.
But he also came from this restaurant called Charlie Trotter's, which for 25 years was really one of the most sort of respected, renowned fine dining. They were really the first farm-to-table type of restaurants. And so his type of food has that sort of touches of experimentations, but also lots of sort of ingredient focus. It's accessible. So, you know, it's a very singular concept in Chicago, and I think in the country as well.
So with the two of you with this particular, you didn't have any food background. What made you decide I wanted to jump in with a food writer and make a movie?
I think for me, it was really about the story. So Kevin heard through the grapevine that Curtis was looking to leave the restaurant that he was at currently, which was the 2-star Michelin Avenues restaurant, and really try, you know, go whole hog and try to open up a restaurant, aim for 3 Michelin stars. So Kevin was telling me about this. We'd worked a little bit before, and when he told me about this idea, it was really, you know, just kind of exploring a world that I didn't know before. And a few months into filming together, you know, Kevin started asking some more questions to Curtis, you know, getting off track of, you know, restaurant, because you can only ask so many times about a particular chair or a particular like piece of food. So that's when I think we really started realizing how deep the story goes.
And I think to that point, we really did not want to make a foodie film, a film just for people who appreciate good food. You know, as we've been telling everyone, the type of movie we want to make is something that our parents could relate to, can understand. So it really had to have, you know, more greater themes, things like sacrifice, brotherhood, family, and you know, redemption. So I think, you know, we really wanted to, in the same way that $1 Million Baby isn't really about boxing. We wanted to make For Grace that is a food movie, but not really about food.
I also think that it's great for anyone that's thinking about starting a business, because, and more documentaries like this really ought to shine a light on that, because especially interviewing people at South by Southwest, I'm interviewing people with Interactive as well. Everybody's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be super easy and I'm just gonna get a little bit of startup funding, I gotta get a VC and go. And it's not that easy. Nowhere close. And I think you guys really do a great job of showing how complicated it can be to start a business, even if you think you know exactly what you're doing from the start.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think it touches on that idea, starting a business not necessarily from nothing, but really, building it up. I think it also has a lot of parallels with, a lot of creative endeavors. Anyone who's creative and is really looking to put their whole being into something that maybe other people don't understand or other people don't see the end goal. Myself and Kevin, for this film particularly, we didn't have a huge budget. We didn't have like a huge team of people. It was Kevin and myself. We edited for years over his dining room table on his iMac.
I mean, we mean literally years.
How long did it take you to make this?
Well, about this film, we did not have a team of 20 people crew. It was the two of us who filmed, edited, color corrected, audio remastered, practically every scene in here. So from beginning to end, it took about 4 years. And so it was, when we say labor of love, it was almost a labor of craziness in some sense, yeah.
And there were some of those parallels where, Curtis thought that his restaurant would take 8 months to open. It took 18 months to open. We thought our film would take a year to make. It took 4 years to make. But in the end, we're kind of here at South by Southwest. Curtis got 3 Michelin stars in the end. There's kind of these parallels in our own story as well.
Well, you also work as a food writer. What did everybody else think when you're telling them, like, okay, I know I said I was going to do this in a year. It's taken a couple of minutes longer than that, but seriously, this movie's going to get made.
Well, I think because the story was just so compelling. The fact of his backstory, his family, the tragedy that's happened in his life, and sort of the prescient nature. There's one scene when he reads a letter from his father that really predicts his future, and when we saw that, we just thought, wow, this story just doesn't come along that often. And so once we told people this story, they said, all right, just keep working on it, and by the end, hopefully we'll have a good product.
So secretly, was there a crappy chef that you kind of started with, no, he is just not dramatic enough? Keep looking. We'll keep filming in case we don't find anything.
Well, Curtis, he's a very sort of quiet person, an inward-looking type of person, very calm demeanor in the kitchen, and so it was hard at times to try to get him to open up, and so it really, the crux of the story is really about his family, and it took maybe about 8 months into filming for him to actually open up to us. So it's very much sort of peeling back or cracking the veneer, small piece by small piece, and it took a long time, but I think patience is the virtue.
So where else can people watch this? Is it premiering here at South by?
Yeah, so we had our big world premiere last night on Friday. That went fantastically. We're still kind of riding the high of that, the emotional high. But we have 2 more screenings at South by Southwest. We have one on Sunday,
It's Sunday the 15th at Alamo Lamar B. And it's also next Friday the 20th at the Stateside Theater at 11 a.m. And then we're also going to be just announced at the Nashville Film Festival and the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Film Festival as well.
Oh, that's great. I hope that you're able to get a national distribution for it because I really enjoyed this one personally.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Not that I would be the slightest bit biased towards this film from any of you that watch Fanboy TV on a regular basis. Would you say that there's any other better lessons for people that are interested in things like food writers? Because so many food writers just do that one thing and aren't really willing to look into related media and whatnot.
I think my background is actually in journalism, so I did a lot of metro investigative courts sorts of stories, and so really looking at it as food writing. If you're approaching it as just writing about quinoa or corn or writing about a roast chicken, from that perspective, it can be very limiting. So pulling back and looking at it more from a macro point of view, looking at stories and looking at how food relates to us, relates to culture. I think that's sort of the way. It doesn't have to be the medium of film or television or writing or podcasts, whatever. It's really not just looking at food and not at the sensation of eating, but looking at it as more storytelling.
You just don't see a whole lot of long-form stories about anything in the food world anymore. So this might be one of the best venues you could find to tell a long-form story like this. Eater is just starting to do some long-form things, but it's not very. Most people just really want 200 words and a recipe. It's
a shame because I think this is really an example of Mark and I just really. When we say long form, we can't even underscore. It is long, super mile long form, really. So, it's this again. I think this is one of those cases where just being really patient and sticking to the story and believing in the narrative arc and trusting the storytelling form. I think it really paid off for us.
Well, I'm glad that you guys were willing to invest 4 years in it. It was definitely worth an hour and a half of my time. If any of you out there get a chance to watch it, go for it. Hopefully it'll get a distribution deal after being at a couple of festivals like this, and everyone that's not at South by will get to see it as well. So stay tuned for even more exciting coverage on South by Southwest Film Fest Live here with Fanboy TV. We have even more movies coming at you for the next couple of hours.